Hello,
Hello.
welcome back. It's been a while. This is a little different for us, a little different for you guys, obviously, because you're watching us and we can't hear Sam doing her normal Sam things. So we just wanted to say hello and do a short lesson, kind of review. And we're doing things a little different. We are having our camera set up on groceries so we can hold it up there. We're sitting in our dining room, which we hardly ever use, except for maybe videoing now, so there'll be something new. So we wanted to see what you guys are up to and what we've been doing. So you want to let everybody know what we've been doing?
We have been being at home a lot. Papa Eck is working at home from our bedroom. Alexander is home. He came home about 5 weeks ago. He's been doing his online school. Scott's been in and out, but other than that, nobody else has been in and out at all. But we have been...
That's not true.
What?
We've had a guest.
Oh, Alex's girlfriend, Madeline, has been here with us. I don't know why I didn't mention that. And then I guess Dana used our bathroom once. But other than that, we haven't had many. But we've been doing a lot of cooking and playing with the dog.
The dog's going to miss us when we go back to work a lot and school.
Yeah.
So.
And so there's a lot of quiet time here with the studying and the working. Papa Eck's been doing tons of running. And I've been working lots of puzzles, big puzzles. And that's about all. It's been going on besides regular cleaning and cooking, laundry, and all of that.
I do go to the churches every Sunday night because Pastor doesn't run the camera and Scott's been preaching, so with the exception of Easter, I do get out for about an hour. Okay, half an hour. But with that, we just kind of wanted to follow up on where we've been. We've been studying the answer book, and since it's been a little while, and just before this all closed down, we were in Hawaii for a couple weeks, and then we came back, and then we had one Sunday with you guys, and then everything kind of got shut down. So I thought I'd kind of go through this week and kind of summarize where we've been, and since I kind of was looking at it, it'd probably take this week and next week to keep this at a reasonable time, since we won't have all of the normal interruptions of
Y'all
you
asking questions.
Asking questions, looking at things, having discussion. So this will be a little bit different than our normal Sunday school class.
Even though we miss you and we'd rather be doing it with you.
So, and hopefully we will be in a couple weeks. Okay, so Mama Ack stepped out because she doesn't want to listen to the whole time or stare at the camera, and feel awkward sitting next to me. So she is listening. She's sitting behind the camera. So I thought we'd just kind of do a summary of all of the chapters that we've been through, or at least part of them this week, and maybe next week we'll go through the rest of them, since there's a lot of chapters that we've been through. So chapter 1 was, is there really a God? And I think this is the fundamental of the whole book. And is there really a God? I mean, it talked a lot about the evidence in the world, if there is a God. And you just look at the universe. We've had a number of speakers come in and talk about the evidence in the world, and just the stars and the solar system and the earth and all of the systems on the earth, and how they all work and how they all work together, and how it's just amazing that humans can survive on the earth. Of all of the planets in the universe, this is the only planet that we could be on, and how everything just works together and is a system and just happens. The complexity of our brain. I mean, man has created some pretty amazing things in history, and we look at the computers we've created and the systems we've created to go to the moon and into outer space, and the satellites or the rockets that we have that are beyond our solar system, and those are complex. But if anything, this COVID-19 proves how frail man is. I mean, this little microscopic thing that's killed 50,000 people in the United States and many more around the world, and that just happened. And in less than the last 6 months, this little bug has taken us out, or little virus. I don't know if that's a bug or not. But you look at how complex a man's brain is, and did that really just evolve out of the ooze? And how would that have happened in all our biological systems that operate, and that the fact that the eye can see, and that it works with the body, and it's in a place where it can see, and how our hands work, and all of that stuff, and that evidence, and how the whole earth works, and birds migrate, and all of that. And there's a lot of discussion about evolution and how we could have evolved, but there's no evidence of evolution and evolution working. I mean, there's changes in species or in things. I mean, the book talks a lot about different animals, like the wolf, and changing in coyotes and dingoes and all the types of dogs we have now. But a dog's DNA, if you look, is simply, I mean, if you look at all the different kinds of dogs that are in the world today, they are all dogs. There's nothing in between, like a dog and a cat, or a dog and a zebra, and some other animals. There's no in between where they come. If you look at, there's lots of different kinds of zebras. There's lots of different kinds of cats. We have everything from a house cat to tigers and cheetahs, and they're all cats, but they're all specific. The DNA is cats. So just, there really is a God. He's done amazing things in creating us. He created the world in 6 days. So that's, I mean, the summary is, I mean, there really is a God. He's done amazing things. I mean, and if you look not just at the Old Testament of the Bible, you look at the New Testament of the Bible, the whole Old Testament points to Jesus coming, and that was written, and Jesus came on the earth. And I mean, that's a known fact. I mean, some people may say he was not God, but the bottom line is the whole Old Testament points to Jesus coming to the earth, and that happened. And there's so many scriptures that were met, that the odds of that just being, that a human man that was not God fulfilling all those scriptures, is beyond the mathematical calculations. I mean, it's just astronomical that would happen. So God is real. So, and God created the heavens and the earth. So so chapter 2 discussed really millions of years of time, that the earth was not created, and the universe was not created in 6 days, but it was millions of years in time. So how old is the earth? When was it created? Christians believe, I mean, based, if you look at the Bible, it's roughly 6,000 to 8,000 years old. I mean, if you look at Genesis, Genesis chapter 1, it was created in 6 days. But then if you look through Genesis chapter 5 and chapter 11, you can see all of the generations, the genealogy of the first people and how long they lived. And if you look at how long they lived, I mean, they lived a lot longer back then. So, I mean, but Adam was 930 years. So obviously his first sons didn't live as long, because brothers were brothers, and they killed, but that's is what it is. But if you look at the age, I mean, they lived a long time before the flood. I mean, just short of 1,000 years. Some of us today think that would not be as fun, because we don't live to be 100, most of us, and that seems like a long time. So, but we believe 6,000 to 8,000 years old, and Why do we believe that? First of all, in Genesis, it talks about 6 days of creation. Also in Exodus chapter 20, verse 9 through 11, God said, 6 literal days. You will work for 6 days, and on the 7th day rest. And it's the same term that is used in Genesis for day. So we can see that 6 days is how long God spent on the earth. And in Genesis, it also talks about a day being the light, and then the dark being one day. So it's 1 24-hour day. So there's a lot of discussion in the chapter about years or time, and different theories about how time passed, and it being millions of years, and how that could have worked with the Bible, because there's a lot of Christians who try to blend millions of years in with the Bible. Some theories are that the days were longer. Each day was one period of time, whether that be a few thousand years, 100,000 years, or a million years, or a billion years. Does that really work? Was there things on the earth for that period of time? The people evolved, or dinosaurs evolved and all that, and they went away during that period of time. Well, if that's true, there was death during that period of time, millions of years. And when God created the earth was perfect. There was no death, there was no sin. And if you had dinosaurs and other creatures living and dying in this million years, several million years or billion years period of time, then there was already death on the earth when that happened, before man was on the earth, and before the original sin. So you might as well just throw out the whole Bible. If God created the earth in millions of years, then why does he say it was one day, evening, or light and day, light and dark? So it's the same word used, it's the same language used. So God was pretty clear in his word. And why, if we believe God can create the universe, why would we think he would need millions of years to do it versus days? God could have done it in an instant and created everything, but he created it in 6 days because that's what he chose to do, 6 literal days, and he rested on the 7th day. So, and I'm kind of going to skip around now on the chapters to kind of tie them together in what they covered in the book. So I was going to jump to chapter 5, which is, it talks about the gap theory. And the gap theory was really, that said in Genesis chapter 1, it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And it says there was a large gap in time between that verse and then the next verse, and the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Yes, I need glasses. And it says that there was a large period of time between verse 1 and verse 2, and that many things happened during that period of time. And all of the dinosaurs lived during that period of time. And there was a great flood, and it's called the Lucifer flood, and that happened, and that made the earth void in verse 2. Goes back to what I was just saying about there would have been death on earth, and God made the earth, and it was pure, and there was no death before Adam sinned. So that is the major issue with a gap theory. Skipping down to chapter 8, and did God literally make everything in 6 days? And I think we covered that pretty heavily, that God did make everything in 6 days, 6 literal 24-hour days. Regardless of what other people think, I mean, it's 6 days. And if you start throwing out, there's theories about, there being longer periods of time. If you believe God created the earth, why not believe what the Bible says, that it's 6 literal days, and not 6, or not some other period of time. So if God made it, believe what the Bible said. So with that, I'll skip down to chapter 16, and it talks about the Ice Age, and was there an Ice Age, and how does that fit in with the world only being 6,000 to 8,000 years old? And if you remember looking back at the class, the Ice Age, there was a lot of discussion about the Ice Age and the fact that it could have fit in after the flood, and we'll talk about tomorrow the flood and all of it, whether Noah's flood was real. But if you look at the Ice Age and when it occurred, or not the Ice Age, the flood and when it occurred, and after the flood, there would have been several things that you would have needed for an Ice Age. One, there was a lot of volcanic activity during the flood, and that would have put a lot of particles in the atmosphere, which would have cooled the earth potentially pretty significantly, because before that there hadn't been rain, so there would have been a lot less clouds before that. After the flood, there was rain, there was a lot of particulate matter in the atmosphere that would have cooled the earth pretty significantly. The other thing, there would have been a lot of precipitation. There hadn't ever been precipitation before the flood. So, and to make an Ice Age, I mean, the book talks about a lot during the Ice Age that there was ice a few thousand feet thick, and we see that in Greenland today. It would have taken a lot more precipitation than we currently have in this time period to create ice, regardless of when or how it happened, that thick. I mean, it takes a lot of snow to make ice. Glaciers are made by snow falling and compacting over time, with more and more snow falling on top of it, and it compacts down to be very dense. So a foot of snow goes down to a few inches of ice. So, but if you looked at ice currently in Greenland and Antarctica, it has a lot of volcanic particulate matter in it. So it makes sense that it would have occurred in a period of time when there was a lot of particulate matter in the atmosphere from volcanoes, which is what occurred. Part of that is when it says in the Bible that it talks about the earth opened up and the seas erupted. That's volcanic, could easily be interpreted as a volcanic activity. There was also more precipitation. I mean, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and there was a lot of rain. There was a lot of water in the atmosphere. So there would have been a lot of the stuff needed to create the conditions needed to create an Ice Age. So, and so then I will jump to the chapter 7 on carbon dating. And I know a lot of people didn't like this chapter. It was very, very technical, along with chapter 9 on radiocarbon, well, I'll cover carbon dating first. I mean, carbon dating discussed a lot about carbon-14, which is a natural element that animals eat. We get it from plants, and when it decays over time at a very, very constant rate, I believe it was 5,700 years for carbon-14 to decay to the other elements. And the assumption is, so if you follow carbon-14, it says that certain animals died a long time ago. Well, the assumption is that there was the amount of carbon-14 in the atmosphere has not changed over time. Well, if you look pre-flood, where there was no death, there was no destruction, or pre-sin, pre-fall, there was no death, there was no destruction. And then if you look at the atmosphere prior to the flood, it would have been much different. So those were not constant. So if you take that being constant away, it changes the outcomes of the carbon-14 dating. And then in chapter 9, it talks about radiometric dating. And radiometric dating is basically a very similar thing. It takes a bunch of elements that decay over time at a very constant rate, and some of them over very, very long periods of time. And I forget which elements, but it's a lot of radioactive elements. Here we go. Uranium-238 decays to lead-206, and it takes 4.47 billion years to decay. Well, if you make assumptions about how much uranium was in a rock when it was made, and then you look now at how much lead is in it, you can say it's this old, but you're making an assumption about how much uranium was in it and that there was no lead-206 in it when it was made. If that was not true and there's lead-206 in it when it was made, all of your assumptions about how old that rock is are thrown out, and they're using this to say that the Earth is roughly 4.5 to 4.6 billion years old. But if you just change that one assumption a little bit and say that a lot of that lead was in there, your assumption is different, and the age of the Earth could easily be the 6,000 to 8,000 years old. So I know that's a lot to go over, but it's kind of wanted people to remember what we've been talking about and just how some of the things that God has done and how amazing it is that we are here, that God created us, that God put the conditions on the earth that we can be here, and that we really need to acknowledge His hand. And it's obvious without even looking at the Bible that God was on this earth, God created this earth for man, and that without God we wouldn't be here. We were designed by an intelligent being to be here, to be able to live on this earth, to be able to survive on this earth, and to be where we are. And we need to acknowledge God and who He is and what He can do in our life. And if all of that is true, then everything in the Bible is true, and we need to turn to Jesus and realize that He is the only way we can go to heaven and be saved. And without Jesus, we will die and we will go to an eternal hell, and that's all in the Bible. And if you acknowledge that the Bible is true, then you need to believe all parts of the Bible and believe that is true. So that's it for today. We mostly wanted to just say hi, and hopefully that you guys are still reading your Bibles every day and doing well and surviving being at home and away from friends at school and friends at church. And we miss you guys, and hopefully we will be back at the church in a couple weeks. So thank you, and if you have any prayer requests or want to share with what you've been doing through the text that's been going around, we'd appreciate it. We'd like to know what you guys are up to. Thanks.